Hey guys, tonight we sail into the vast, lonely South Pacific in 1704. You are Alexander Selkirk, a skilled Scottish sailing master. Your ship, the Cinque Ports, is riddled with woodworm and leaking badly after rounding Cape Horn. Your young captain insists on pushing forward, but you believe the vessel is a death trap. Feel the damp chill of the forecastle. Hear the constant groan of the pumps fighting a losing battle against the sea. You're faced with an impossible decision. Stay aboard the doomed ship, or choose to be left utterly alone on an uninhabited island hundreds of miles from anywhere. Let's be honest. Surviving 4 years in complete solitude, armed with little more than a musket and your own wits, is a feat most of us couldn't manage for 4 days. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. As always, I'd love to see where in the world you're listening from, so please drop your city and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. 1704. Feel the deck shift beneath your boots, a familiar dance you've known since boyhood. The timbers groan, a language of stress and strain you read as clearly as any chart. Salt spray mists your face, cold and sharp, a taste that instantly transports you leagues away from the quiet fishing village of Lower Largo back in Scotland. That world is a fading dream. Your reality is this rolling piece of timber, the Cinque Ports, a galley, smaller, nimbler than a fat merchantman, her teeth the rows of cannons lining her deck. Your purpose out here in the vast, heaving grey of the South Pacific isn't trade, it's licensed hunting. You are a privateer, sailing under Queen Anne's commission in this endless war against France and Spain. Your quarry, their treasure, laden ships. Your reward, if fortune smiles, a share of plunder that could change a man's life forever. You are Alexander Selkirk, the ship's sailing master. Feel the weight of that title. You're the keeper of the ship's path, wrestling its course from the indifferent ocean with compass, astrolabe, and the cryptic whispers of the sun and stars. You're second in command. When the wind screams and the sails strain, your voice must be sharper, clearer, directing the intricate ballet of rope and canvas that keeps this vessel alive. You're nearing 30. The sea has etched its map onto your face and filled your gut with a hard-won knowledge that often puts you at odds with the man who holds the ultimate command. Your temper, quick and hot as a flash of powder, doesn't help. Life aboard a privateer is a devil's bargain. Hope and death sail side by side. 80 souls crammed into this damp, perpetually moving world. Feel the chill seep into your bones, a dampness woven into the very fabric of your clothes, your bedding, your skin. Taste the diet. Salt beef hard enough to use as a club, biscuit riddled with the black trails of weevils, watered down rum that barely warms the gut. Watch the men. Look for the signs, the spongy, bleeding gums, the weary slump of the shoulders, the old wounds that weep anew, scurvy, the slow rot from within. It's a constant, silent passenger on these long voyages, and part of your duty is to spot its first, insidious marks. Discipline is a taut rope in this floating world. These aren't disciplined navy tars. They're adventurers, debtors fleeing the bailiff, rough men lured by the gleam of Spanish silver. Holding them requires Captain Thomas Stradling's authority, backed by your own firm hand, and the ever-present threat of the lash whistling through the salt air. And the captain, Stradling. He's young, too young perhaps for the burden of 80 lives and a queen's commission in these god-forsaken waters. His command stems from connections back in London, not from decades spent reading the moods of the sea. Feel the constant chafe between you. His ambition burns hot and bright, a restless hunger for the glory of a great prize. You, weathered by more storms, counsel caution. Tend the ship first, you argue. Keep the crew healthy. Don't chase every smudge of sail on the horizon. He hears your prudence as pessimism, maybe even defiance. It's a low, grinding friction, the scrape of his youthful fire against your seasoned, stubborn caution. You've clashed before over sail changes in rising winds, over pursuing dubious targets. Each argument leaves a residue, a souring of the air between the quarterdeck and your station. Your days are consumed by the relentless demands of your craft. You stand your watch, feeling the ship's pulse through the soles of your boots, tasting the wind, judging its strength and direction. You pore over the precious, inaccurate charts in the dim light of the cabin, making your careful calculations, plotting a course through a world where monsters might still occupy the blank spaces. You oversee the complex machinery of the ship, the hundreds of ropes, the acres of canvas, ensuring everything is sound, ready for the calm or the storm. You manage the rhythm of the watches, the small vital tasks that keep the vessel and its crew functioning. This is the professional demand, the constant, meticulous work required to keep chaos at bay. But chaos is always circling, waiting. It waits in the sudden squall that can rip your sails to ribbons. It waits in the roar of Spanish cannons. It waits in the rotten heart of a single barrel of water. And it waits. You are beginning to fear, in the very timbers of this ship. Stand your watch as the sun bleeds into the western horizon, painting the clouds in shades of bruised purple and angry red. Listen. Listen past the familiar groan of the hull, past the snap of the pennant in the wind. Hear the rhythmic, weary clank, clank, clank of the pumps, a sound that has become the ship's constant, desperate heartbeat, a sound that never seems to gain ground against the water seeping in through the strained planks below. The sea is vast, the potential prize is rich, but your sailor's soul, your deep ingrained understanding of a ship's limits, tells you something is wrong. The Cinque Ports is tired, she is wounded, and the greatest danger you face may not be the enemy's guns, but the slow, inevitable surrender of the wood beneath your feet. Your duty is to guide her, protect her. But the conflict coiling inside you is the terrifying, growing certainty that she is fighting a battle she cannot win. The small Spanish prize has long since been looted and burned, its ashes scattered on the indifferent waves. But the cost of that meagre victory remains, a debt being paid daily by the groaning timbers of the Cinque Ports and the aching backs of her crew. The ship feels different now. She moves with a heavy, waterlogged sluggishness, her natural buoyancy compromised. The constant, rhythmic clanking of the bilge pumps, once a background noise, has become the dominant sound of your world, a relentless, metallic heartbeat counting down the seconds of your borrowed time. Your professional unease, a small seed planted during the chase, has taken root and grown into a cold, pervasive dread. As sailing master, the health of this vessel is your domain, your responsibility. You begin your inspection not with suspicion, but with a methodical, almost ritualistic thoroughness. You descend into the lower decks, into the cramped, dark spaces where the crew sling their hammocks, the air thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, stale bilge water, and something else. The faint, damp, earthy scent of decay. You run your hands along the great curved ribs of the ship, feeling for unusual stress, for warped planks. You hold your lantern close to the inner hull, examining the seams between the timbers. Where there should be tight, waterproof seals packed with oakum and pitch, you see ominous signs, hairline cracks, a persistent weeping dampness, and in some places, small, glistening beads of seawater forcing their way through. The pumps tell the clearest story. You spend an hour watching the men assigned to that Sisyphusian task. They work in shifts, their faces grim, their movements weary. The torrent of water they bring up from the bilge never seems to lessen. It pours across the deck and out through the scuppers, a constant, brown, foul-smelling river bleeding from the heart of the ship. You ask the pump foreman how much water she's making. He just shakes his head, his expression bleak. More every day, Master Selkirk. more than she ought. It is deep in the forepeak, the lowest and most forward part of the ship, that you find the most damning evidence. Here, the wood feels strangely soft under the pressure of your knife point. You hold your lantern close and see them, tiny pinprick holes in the surface of the oak planks, almost invisible unless you know what to look for. Woodworms, Teredo navalis, shipworms. Not worms at all, but small, voracious mollusks that bore into any submerged timber, turning the strongest oak into a fragile, honeycombed sponge from the inside out. They are the invisible cancer of wooden ships, and once they take hold, they are almost impossible to eradicate at sea. You ascend back to the relative light and air of your small cabin, the knowledge a cold weight in your gut. You open your logbook, the official record of the ship's voyage. With meticulous, steady handwriting, you document your findings, the location of the weeping seams, the alarming rate of water ingress measured at the pumps, and your grave suspicion of widespread shipworm infestation. You note the date, the time, your professional assessment. Vessel requires immediate and extensive repairs to hull below waterline. You sign your name. It is your duty. It is your testimony. Later that day, you present your findings to Captain Stradling in his cabin. You lay out the facts calmly, professionally, pointing to your entry in the logbook. You speak of the pumps, the strained timbers, the signs of worm. You recommend diverting to the nearest safe harbour, perhaps Valdivia on the Chilean coast, though it is a Spanish port and carries its own risks for careening and repairs. Stradling listens, tapping his fingers impatiently on the table. He does not dispute your findings outright. The evidence of the pumps is undeniable. But his interpretation is vastly different. Worms? Leaks? All ships have worms and leaks, Master Selkirk, he says with a dismissive wave of his hand, especially after rounding the Horn. She's a strong ship, a bit of extra pumping, some minor patching by the carpenter. She'll see us through to the next prize. Captain, you insist, keeping your voice level despite the rising frustration. These are not minor leaks. The pumps cannot keep up indefinitely. If we encounter heavy weather. Heavy weather? Stradling cuts you off, a spark of anger in his eyes. We are privateers, man, not merchants waiting for a fair wind. We are here to hunt, not to hide in port, cowering from every squall. Time is money. Every day spent careening is a day a Spanish galleon might slip past us. He points to the chart. There are islands ahead. Juan Fernandez. We can take on water there, perhaps find some timber for patching. That will suffice. You know it will not suffice. Patching from the inside is a temporary measure at best. The worms will continue their silent destruction, but you see the set of his jaw, the stubborn glint in his eyes. He has made his decision. His ambition, his hunger for a prize, outweighs your caution. To argue further would be seen as insubordination, a dangerous path on a privateer ship. You give a stiff nod. As you command, Captain. You leave his cabin, the conflict unresolved, the danger unaddressed. As you walk the deck, you hear the relentless clank, clank, clank of the pumps, a sound that now feels like a funeral dirge. You see the crewmen casting worried glances at each other, their hushed conversations falling silent as you approach. They know the ship is wounded. They look to you, the sailing master, the man who understands the ship's language, hoping for reassurance. But you have none to give. Your professional duty has been fulfilled. Your warning logged. Yet the weight of your knowledge feels heavier than ever. You are trapped on a dying ship, commanded by a man who refuses to see the danger, sailing deeper into an unforgiving ocean. Your conflict is no longer just with the captain's ambition, but with the terrifying certainty that you are all sailing towards disaster, pump by weary pump. The weeks following your ignored warning crawl by with agonizing slowness. The Cinque Ports pushes sluggishly through the vast, empty swells of the Pacific, her course set for the distant Juan Fernandez Islands. But the ship is weary, wounded, and the mood aboard has turned as sour and stagnant as the bilge water sloshing deep in her hold. The relentless, monotonous clank, clank, clank of the pumps is no longer just a background noise. It is the pounding, insistent rhythm of the crew's growing fear. You see the change in the men. The easy camaraderie of the early voyage, the rough jokes and shared hopes of plunder, have evaporated. They move through their duties with a sullen, resentful slowness. Orders are obeyed, but without spirit. Work that should be done with quick, professional pride, mending sails, coiling ropes, is done sloppily, carelessly. Fights break out over petty grievances, fueled by dwindling rations and frayed nerves. The discipline that Captain Stradling relies upon is beginning to fray. The food situation worsens. The salted beef is now more green than red, crawling with maggots. The hardtack biscuits are riddled with weevils, a moving, unwelcome source of extra protein. You watch men pick them out with grim determination before gnawing on the hard, dry bread. Hunger gnaws constantly, weakening bodies and shortening tempers. Your own conflict with Captain Stradling simmers just below the surface, occasionally boiling over into public view. You argue on the quarterdeck during a change of watch, your voices sharp enough for the helmsman and the men nearby to overhear. You point to the latest sounding from the pumps. The water level in the hold is undeniably rising, despite the constant effort. You argue for shortening sail, for easing the strain on the weakened hull. She can take it, Selkirk. Stradling snaps back, his face flushed, his youthful pride stung by your persistent pessimism. You see disaster in every creaking timber. We press on. There's prize money waiting, and I'll not let this crew's grumbling or your fears cheat us of it. His public dismissal of your concerns, his refusal to acknowledge the danger that every man aboard can feel in his bones, further erodes the crew's confidence. They see the sailing master, the man they trust to understand the ship, being overruled by a captain they increasingly see as reckless or blind. The whispers begin. You hear them in the dark confines of the forecastle, where the common sailors sleep. You catch snippets of hushed, angry conversation as you pass groups of men huddled on the deck during the night watch. They speak of the leaks, of the worms, of the captain's stubbornness. They speak of the dwindling supplies, and they speak, in low, dangerous tones, of taking matters into their own hands. One night, a fellow Scot, a steady, reliable hand named Ramsay, approaches you quietly in the shadows near the bowsprit. "Master Selkirk," he murmurs, his eyes darting nervously towards the quarterdeck. The men. They're talking. Bad talk. Talk of alternatives. If the captain won't see reason, mutiny. The word hangs unspoken between you, as cold and sharp as a dirk in the darkness. It is the ultimate crime at sea, punishable by hanging from the yardarm. But on a ship pushed to its limits, thousands of miles from any law, it is also a desperate, terrifying possibility. Ramsay looks at you, his eyes pleading. They respect you, sir. They know you understand the ship. They'll listen to you. If you were to... He leaves the thought unfinished, but the implication is clear. The men are looking for a leader, someone to challenge Stradling's disastrous course. You are caught in an impossible position. Your duty is to the captain, to the ship's command structure. To even listen to such talk is treasonous. But your conscience, your sailor's knowledge, tells you the men's fears are justified. Stradling is leading them towards disaster. To remain silent feels like a betrayal of the crew whose lives depend on your skill. You send Ramsay away with a non-committal grunt, warning him sternly against such dangerous talk. But the seed has been planted. You are the second in command, a man of authority. Yet you are also the voice of dissent, the one man who dares to speak the truth the captain ignores. The crew's fear and desperation are pulling you in one direction. Your ingrained sense of duty and the hierarchy of the sea pull you in another. You stand your lonely watch under a sky filled with cold, distant stars. The ship groans beneath you, a constant, weary complaint. The pumps clank their relentless, failing rhythm. You feel the eyes of the crew on you, watchful, waiting. You feel the weight of their fear, their desperation, and their dangerous, unspoken hopes. The conflict is no longer just between you and the captain, or between the ship and the sea. It is now a battle for the soul of the crew itself. And you, Alexander Selkirk, are standing directly on the fault line. September 1704. Land. After weeks adrift in the grey, leaking purgatory that the Cinque Ports had become, the sight of Mars, a Tierra rising green and mountainous from the blue Pacific, is a miracle. It is a jagged emerald set in an endless sea, promising fresh water, firewood, and perhaps even fresh meat from the wild goats, said to roam its slopes. As the ship drops anchor in the calm waters of Cumberland Bay, a collective sigh of relief seems to run through the weary crew. For the first time in months, the relentless clank, clank, clank of the pumps falls silent as men are assigned to shore parties, eager to feel solid ground beneath their feet. But for you, Alexander Selkirk, this anchorage is not a place of rest. It is a place of reckoning. The relative calm of the bay offers the first real opportunity since rounding the Horn to properly assess the grievous wounds your vessel has sustained. While Captain Stradling eagerly discusses plans for hunting goats and searching for Spanish sails, your attention is fixed downward, on the ship's hull where it meets the clear, turquoise water. You row a small dinghy around the anchored ship, your eyes scanning the waterline with a grim, professional focus. What you see confirms your worst fears. The seams between the planks are visibly weeping, trailing thin, dark streams of bilge water into the clean sea. In several places, the wood around the waterline is soft, spongy, pockmarked with the telltale signs of the shipworms you suspected. The damage is not minor, it is fundamental. You return to the Cinque Ports, your face set, your mind resolved. You find Captain Stradling on the quarterdeck, impatiently overseeing the unloading of empty water casks. The crew is nearby, within earshot, their earlier relief already fading as they watch the silent, tense exchange between their two commanders. Captain, you begin, your voice, low but clear, stripped bare of any deference. I have inspected the hull. She is worse than I feared. The worms have taken hold below the waterline. Her seams are open. She is barely holding together as it is. Stradling turns, his expression hardening. We knew she was leaking, Master Selkirk. We have pumps. We have a carpenter. The pumps are losing ground, sir, you counter, keeping your voice steady despite the rising heat in your chest, and the carpenter cannot replace rotten timbers at sea. She needs to be careened. Here, now. We must beach her, scrape her hull clean, and make proper repairs before we venture 1 league further into this ocean. Stradling laughs. A short, sharp, incredulous sound. Careen her? Here? Spend weeks, perhaps months, scraping barnacles while Spanish galleons laden with silver sail past? Have you lost your mind, man? It is the ship I am concerned with losing, Captain. Your voice rises now, the Scottish burr thickening with your anger, and the lives of the 80 men aboard her. She is unseaworthy. To take her back into the open ocean in this state is not seamanship. It is madness. It is murder. The word hangs in the air, heavy and dangerous. The nearby crewmen fall utterly silent, their eyes wide, watching this unprecedented confrontation. You have crossed a line. Stradling's face darkens with fury. His hand drops to the hilt of the pistol tucked into his belt. Murder, is it? He spits, stepping closer until you can feel the heat radiating from his anger. And what of the whispers I hear below decks, Master Selkirk? The talk of turning back? The grumbling about my command? Is that your work? Are you trying to turn my crew against me with your constant cowardly pessimism? I speak the truth of the ship. You roar back, abandoning all pretense of naval hierarchy. a truth you refuse to see because you are blinded by your hunger for a prize. This vessel is a death trap, and every man aboard knows it but you. You stand face to face on the quarterdeck, two stags locking horns, the entire crew your silent, terrified audience. This is more than a disagreement. It is a fundamental clash of wills, a battle for the ship's soul. Stradling holds your gaze for a long, burning moment, his knuckles white on his pistol grip. Then, his face twists into a mask of pure, frustrated rage. He takes a step back, his voice thick with sarcasm and fury. "So," he sneers, his voice carrying across the silent deck, "the great Alexander Selkirk, the master navigator, is afraid of a little seawater, is he? Afraid of the ship? Well then, I have a simple solution for your delicate nerves." He points a trembling finger towards the green, silent island looming beside them. "If you fear the Cinque Ports so much, Master Selkirk," he shouts, his voice cracking with rage, "then stay here." The words hang in the sudden, shocked silence. It is an outburst, a rhetorical challenge, a captain's angry dismissal. He does not truly mean it as an order, but you hear it differently. You hear it not as an insult, but as an offer, an escape. You look from Stradling's furious face to the silent, watchful faces of the crew. You look at the worn, familiar deck of the Cinque Ports, a ship you now know in your bones is doomed. And then you look at the island. It is vast, unknown, filled with dangers you cannot even imagine. But it is solid. It does not leak. It will not sink beneath you in the middle of a storm. A strange, cold calm settles over you. The fear is still there, a knot deep in your belly. But it is outweighed by a different, more powerful certainty. The certainty of the ship's demise. The choice, so suddenly, brutally presented, is no choice at all. Captain Stradling's furious words echo in the sudden sharp silence that follows. "If you fear the Cinque Ports so much, Master Selkirk, then stay here." It was meant as a final, contemptuous dismissal, a way to shame you into submission. The men on deck, frozen in place, watch with bated breath, expecting you to recoil, to apologize, to back down. But in your mind, the words are not an insult. They are an impossible offer. Stark and terrifying, but clear. You meet Stradling's blazing eyes, and for a long moment, the entire world seems to hold still. You taste the salt in the air, feel the uneasy swell of the deck beneath your feet. You look from his furious face to the silent, watchful faces of the crew, then to the worn, familiar timbers of the Cinque Ports. Timbers you know, with chilling certainty, are rotting from within. And then your gaze settles on the island, Tierra, its green slopes rising majestically from the tranquil bay. It is wild, unknown, brimming with unseen dangers, but it is solid. It will not leak, it will not founder. A strange, cold clarity washes over you, cutting through the heat of the argument. The fear is still there, a knot of ice in your gut, but it is overshadowed by an even greater certainty. The Cinque Ports is doomed. To stay aboard is to gamble your life on a losing hand, commanded by a captain whose pride outweighs his judgment. To choose the island, that is a gamble too, but one where your fate rests, for better or worse, in your own hands. "Very well, Captain," you say, your voice remarkably calm, cutting through the stunned silence like a knife. "I will stay here." The words hang in the air, stunning everyone. Stradling's face drains of colour, his jaw dropping. He didn't expect you to accept. The crew murmurs, a ripple of disbelief and dawning horror passing through them. Stradling recovers, his anger reigniting, mixed now with a desperate desire to avoid this absurd turn of events. "Don't be a fool, Selkirk. I speak in anger. There's no living to be had on that rock. You'll die here, man. And what guarantees of life does your ship offer, Captain?" You retort, your voice still steady. My fears are not for the living of it, but for the dying of it. I'd rather face God's wilderness than your certain folly. There is no turning back. Your choice is made, spoken aloud, witnessed by all. You gather your belongings with a methodical precision born of decades at sea. Your sea chest is already packed with your most essential items. You grab your thick bedding, a heavy musket, a good store of powder and shot, a hatchet for wood, your sharpest knife, and your invaluable navigational instruments, your quadrant, compass, and logbook. Most importantly, your well-worn Bible. These few items are your lifeline, your connection to the world you are abandoning. You are rowed ashore in the ship's dinghy by two silent, grim-faced sailors. They avoid your gaze. As the keel scrapes on the gravelly beach, you step onto the land, feeling the solid earth beneath your feet, a sensation both strange and profoundly reassuring after months of swaying deck. You watch as they unload your meager possessions, then turn the dinghy back towards the waiting ship. You stand there, a solitary figure on the beach, watching the dinghy return to the Cinque ports. Captain Stradling stands on the quarterdeck, a dark, rigid silhouette. No one waves, no one calls out. The ship, which has been your home for so long, seems to shrink with every stroke of the oars, pulling away from you, taking all human connection with it. The anchor is weighed, sails unfurl with a sigh. Slowly, inexorably, the Cinque Ports begins to move. She turns her bow towards the open ocean, a dark, wounded silhouette against the vast expanse. You watch her, your heart a cold knot in your chest, until she is nothing more than a faint speck on the horizon, then swallowed entirely by the immensity of the sea. Silence descends. Not the familiar silence of a ship at anchor, but a deep, resonant silence that presses in on you from all sides. The cries of seabirds, the gentle lapping of waves on the shore, the rustle of leaves on the trees. Every sound is amplified, raw, unfamiliar. You are utterly alone. History would record that your fears were brutally justified. The Cinque Ports, plagued by leaks and worms, would indeed founder off the coast of South America less than a year later, taking most of her crew to a watery grave. Only a few, including Captain Stradling, would survive the wreck, only to be captured and endure years of Spanish imprisonment. But you, Alexander Selkirk, standing on the silent beach of Tierra, know none of this. You know only the crushing weight of your solitude and the terrifying, profound uncertainty of the gamble you have just taken. The sun begins to set, casting long, lonely shadows across your new, terrifying kingdom. The ship is gone. The last, faint smudge of sail has vanished into the immense blue emptiness where the sea meets the sky. You stand motionless on the shingle beach, the small pile of your salvaged belongings beside you, and the silence crashes down upon you like a physical blow. It is a silence unlike any you have ever known, not the watchful quiet of a ship becalmed, nor the expectant hush of a forest before dawn. This is the silence of utter, absolute abandonment. Your mind struggles to comprehend the finality of it. Just hours ago, you were part of a community, 80 souls bound together on a shared vessel. Now, you are a community of one. The familiar sounds of shipboard life, the creak of timbers, the snap of canvas, the rough voices of your shipmates are gone, replaced by sounds that are strange, alien, and deeply unsettling. You hear the thin, high cry of unfamiliar seabirds overhead. You hear the constant, gentle sigh of the waves washing onto the shore, a sound that no longer speaks of journeys but of boundaries, of your inescapable confinement. And then you hear it, a deep, guttural, barking roar echoing from the rocks at the far end of the bay. It is a sound like no beast you have ever encountered, a monstrous, terrifying noise that raises the hairs on your arms. Your hand instinctively goes to the musket lying beside you. Are there dangerous predators here? Beasts that could tear a man apart? You do not yet know it is only the sound of large sea lions, hauled out on the rocks, their presence noisy but harmless. The full weight of your decision crashes down upon you. What have you done? Your stubborn pride, your quick temper, your certainty about the ship's fate. Was it all just a fool's gamble? You picture the Cinque Ports sailing on, perhaps finding calm seas, perhaps even taking a rich prize. You imagine your former shipmates laughing at the mad Scot they left behind on a desolate rock. A wave of profound, sickening regret washes over you, so powerful it makes your knees buckle. You sink onto your sea chest, your head in your hands. Despair, cold and absolute, wraps itself around you. You are marooned, alone, 400 miles from the nearest inhabited land, a land controlled by your enemies. No friendly ship will ever come here by chance. Your rescue depends on the slimmest, most improbable of hopes. You could die here of sickness, of starvation, of injury, and no one in the world would ever know your fate. Your bones would simply bleach on this beach, another forgotten casualty of the sea. For the rest of that first day, you do almost nothing. You are paralyzed by the sheer, overwhelming scale of your solitude. You sit on the beach, watching the sun crawl across the sky, watching the tide creep in and out, your mind a numb, echoing void. The practical, rational mind of the sailing master, the mind that knows how to navigate, how to survive, is utterly silenced by the crushing emotional weight of your abandonment. You feel like a ghost, already detached from the world of the living. The sun finally sets, painting the western sky in indifferent, beautiful colors. Darkness falls swiftly, and with it comes a new, more primal fear. The strange barking roars from the seals echo louder in the night. The rustling sounds from the dense forest behind you take on menacing shapes in your imagination. You huddle beside your meager pile of possessions, clutching your musket, staring into the oppressive blackness. Your rational mind knows you must build a fire, find shelter, make a plan. But the overwhelming, paralyzing weight of your absolute aloneness pins you to the spot. You have chosen this. You have traded the known danger of a dying ship for the unknown terror of this solitary world. And as you sit shivering on the beach, listening to the alien sounds of the island night, you are consumed by the horrifying, dawning realization that your battle for survival has only just begun, and your greatest enemy might not be the island itself, but the crushing despair within your own heart. You awaken on the beach to the harsh glare of the morning sun and the sharp, insistent cry of a seabird. Your body is stiff, cold, and aching from a night spent huddled on the damp sand. The despair that paralyzed you yesterday still sits heavy in your gut, a cold stone of dread. But another, more urgent, and far more primal need is beginning to assert itself. Thirst. Your mouth is dry as dust, your throat raw. The fear of dying alone is still present, but it is overshadowed now by the immediate, non-negotiable demand of your own body. You must find fresh water, or you will not live to see another sunset. Slowly, painfully, you pull yourself to your feet, you scan the bay. You see small streams trickling down from the forested hills inland, disappearing into the sand near the high tide line. Hope flickers. You stumble towards the nearest one, your legs weak, your head pounding. You reach the spot where the stream meets the beach and scoop up a handful of water. You bring it to your lips, and your hope instantly turns to bitter disappointment. Salt. The fresh water flowing down from the hills mixes with the seawater here, creating a brackish, undrinkable pool. You try another stream, further down the beach. The same result. Panic begins to bubble beneath the surface of your exhaustion. Water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. You realize you must leave the relative openness of the beach and venture inland, following the streams to their source, away from the corrupting influence of the sea. The climb is arduous. The island's slopes are steep, covered in a dense tangle of unfamiliar trees, ferns, and sharp-thorned bushes that tear at your clothes and skin. The sun beats down, and the humid air is thick and still away from the coastal breeze. Your thirst becomes a roaring fire in your throat. Your mind begins to play tricks, imagining the cool, clear water of a Scottish burn, the taste of fresh well water from your childhood. You follow a dry stream bed upwards, hoping it will lead you to a source. You scramble over rocks, push through thick undergrowth, your breath coming in ragged gasps. Just as you are about to succumb to despair, ready to simply lie down and let the thirst take you, you hear it. Faintly at first, then clearer, the unmistakable musical sound of trickling water. You push through a final curtain of ferns and see it. A small, clear spring bubbling out from between moss-covered rocks, forming a tiny pool before spilling down the hillside. It is the most beautiful sight you have ever beheld. You fall to your knees beside the pool and plunge your face into the water, drinking deeply, greedily, the cool liquid, a shock, a blessing, a resurrection. You drink until your belly aches, until the fire in your throat is finally extinguished. You splash the water on your face, washing away the salt and the despair. Life, pure and simple, flows back into you. With thirst momentarily conquered, the next primal need asserts itself. Fire. You need warmth against the coming night's chill. You need a way to cook the goats you must eventually hunt. You need the flame as a weapon against the darkness and the unknown creatures that might inhabit it. Fire is civilization. Fire is safety. You return to your small camp on the beach, your steps lighter now, your mind focused. You unpack your precious tinderbox, a piece of flint, a steel striker, and a small nest of dry, charred cloth. The char cloth designed to catch a spark. Finding dry tinder on this damp island is the first challenge. You search along the high tide line, gathering scraps of dry seaweed and brittle driftwood. You venture into the forest edge, collecting dry leaves, peeling thin, papery strips of bark from unfamiliar trees, and gathering the driest twigs you can find. Back at your camp, you prepare your hearth, clearing a space on the sand, surrounding it with stones. You arrange your tinder, the finest, driest grass and bark shavings, into a small, loose bundle. You place a piece of your precious charcloth at its heart. Now, the painstaking work begins. You kneel, shielding the tinderbox from the slight sea breeze. You hold the flint firmly in one hand, the steel striker in the other. You strike down, hard and fast, scraping the steel against the sharp edge of the flint. A small shower of faint orange sparks leaps into the air and dies. You strike again, and again. Your knuckles are scraped raw, your muscles ache with the unfamiliar motion. Doubt begins to creep in. What if your powder got damp on the journey ashore? What if the flint is poor quality? You force the doubts away, focusing only on the rhythm, the precise angle of the strike. Strike, sparks, nothing. Strike, sparks, nothing. Strike, and then success. A single bright spark lands squarely on the black surface of the charcloth. It does not burst into flame, but it begins to glow, a tiny, determined red eye expanding slowly outwards. You hold your breath, your heart pounding. This is the most delicate moment. You carefully transfer the glowing charcloth into the heart of your tinder bundle. You cup your hands around it, creating a small dark space, and you blow. Gently at first, then with increasing strength. The tinder begins to smoke, a thin, acrid curl rising into the air. You blow again, feeding the spark with your own breath, your own life. The smoke thickens, you smell the heat, and then a flicker. A tiny, hesitant tongue of yellow flame appears, wavers, catches hold. It lives. You feed it with the smallest, driest twigs, nurturing it, protecting it, until it grows into a small, stable fire, crackling cheerfully on the sand. The relief is immense, almost dizzying. You have done it. You have brought fire into this wilderness. You have water. You have warmth. You have the two pillars upon which all survival rests. As dusk begins to fall, you sit before your small fire, the flames pushing back the encroaching shadows and the damp chill of the evening. The sound of the crackling wood is the most comforting sound in the world, but you know this victory is only temporary. The spring provides water, but the fire demands constant vigilance. It must be fed. It must be guarded against the rain and the wind. It cannot be allowed to die. You realize your new life will be governed by this constant vigil. The primal need for warmth and safety is not a battle won once, but a daily, hourly struggle against the indifference of your island prison. Your fire is a small, fragile piece of the human world you have brought with you, and keeping it alive will be your most sacred and essential duty. The fire crackles, a small, defiant heart of warmth on the dark beach. You have water from the spring inland. These are the twin anchors of your survival, secured through the desperate clarity of your first days. But now, as the initial shock begins to recede, a new, more complex need asserts itself. It is the need to know. You cannot survive huddled on this small strip of sand, forever glancing nervously at the dark, impenetrable wall of forest behind you. The island is your world now. If you are to live here, you must understand it. You must map its resources, its dangers, its boundaries. You must explore your kingdom. The first forays inland are tentative, cautious acts. You leave the relative openness of the beach, plunging into the deep shade beneath the tree canopy. The world changes instantly. The air grows thick, humid, and still, heavy with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and 1,000 unfamiliar blossoms. The sounds change too. The constant sigh of the waves is replaced by the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the sharp calls of strange birds high in the trees, and the constant, high-pitched hum of insects. It is a world teeming with hidden life, and every shadow seems to hold a potential threat. You move slowly, your hatchet held ready in your hand, your senses stretched taut. The ground is uneven, a tangle of roots and fallen logs hidden beneath a thick carpet of ferns. Progress is slow, exhausting. You are a sailor, accustomed to the wide, open horizons of the sea. This dense, vertical, closed-in world feels alien, suffocating. The fear of getting lost is a constant, cold presence. You find yourself frequently stopping, listening, trying to fix your position relative to the sound of the distant surf. But you are, first and foremost, a navigator. Though your charts are useless here, the habits of your profession remain. You begin to build a map in your mind. You note the position of the sun as it filters through the leaves. You identify the highest peak on the island, a jagged silhouette against the sky, and use it as a fixed point. You follow the streams inland, understanding that they are the arteries of this land, the paths that connect the high ground to the sea. Slowly, painstakingly, you begin to impose your own internal grid onto this wild, untamed landscape. As you explore, you begin to discover the island's secrets, its hidden treasures. You find trees with smooth grey bark and leaves that release a pungent, spicy aroma when crushed. You recognize it from your voyages in the West Indies. Pimento wood. Its straight grain will be perfect for building a more permanent shelter, and its aromatic smoke might keep the insects at bay. A vital discovery. Near the spring, you find patches of familiar green leaves growing in the damp earth, watercress, and digging nearby, your fingers close around small hard roots, wild turnips. These are not native plants, they are ghosts, remnants left behind by the Spanish sailors who stopped here for water decades, perhaps centuries ago. They are a gift from the past, a vital source of food beyond the meat you must hunt. You taste a turnip root, sharp, earthy, and wonderfully blessedly real. You begin to understand the island's true inhabitants. You see them often now. The feral goats. They are everywhere, moving in small, nimble herds across the steep slopes, their coats shaggy, their eyes wild. They are descendants of animals left here by Juan Fernandez himself, the island's discoverer. They are wary, quick to flee, but they are numerous. You know that if you can learn to hunt them effectively, you will not starve. You also identify the dangers. The coastline is ringed with treacherous, wave-battered cliffs where a single misstep could send you plunging into the sea. Inland, deep ravines and hidden crevices scar the landscape. You find no sign of large land predators, no wolves, no big cats, but the sheer indifference of the terrain is a danger in itself. Your most important quest is for a high place, a vantage point from which you can survey your domain and, more importantly, watch the sea. After several difficult climbs, you find it. A rocky outcrop high on the island's central ridge, perhaps the peak now called El Yunque. From here, the world unfolds beneath you. You can see the entire shape of your island kingdom, its bays and headlands, its forested slopes and hidden valleys. And beyond it, in all directions, stretches the vast, unbroken, and utterly empty expanse of the Pacific Ocean. You stand on your lonely watchtower, the wind whipping at your ragged clothes. The view is magnificent, breathtaking, but it offers no comfort, only confirmation. You are utterly, completely alone. No sail breaks the perfect line of the horizon. No smudge of smoke signals another human presence within 1,000 miles. As you make your way back down to your camp on the beach, the fear of the unknown island has lessened slightly. It is no longer a formless, menacing presence. It has begun to take shape in your mind. You know where to find water. You know where to find food. You have identified the dangers. You have mapped your prison. The conflict is shifting. It is no longer just your fear versus the unknown. It is now your knowledge, your resilience, and your enduring hope versus the immense, crushing, and undeniable reality of your isolation. The beach is no place to live. The nights are cold, the damp sea air chills you to the bone, and the constant, booming chorus of the seals on the nearby rocks makes sleep a fitful, nervous thing. You have water, you have fire, you have begun to map your kingdom. Now, you need a fortress, however humble. You need walls, you need a home. You choose a spot just above the high tide line, near your precious spring but still close enough to the beach to keep watch over the empty sea. You begin the work with the methodical patience of a sailor building something to withstand a storm. You use your hatchet, a vital piece of your salvaged world, to cut down young pimento trees, their wood straight and strong. You drive the sharpened ends into the sandy soil, creating a small, circular framework. You weave smaller, more flexible branches between these uprights, slowly creating a rough but sturdy wall. For the roof, you gather armfuls of long grasses and broad leaves, layering them thickly to shed the worst of the rain. It is slow, back-breaking work. Your hands, already calloused from the pumps of the Cinque Ports, become blistered anew. Your muscles ache with the unfamiliar strain of chopping and hauling. But with every branch woven, every layer of thatch added, you feel a small, rising sense of accomplishment. You are not just passively surviving, you are actively imposing your will upon this place. You are building. After several days of relentless labor, it is finished. It is little more than a crude, circular hut, perhaps 10 feet across, with a low doorway and no window. But it is yours. It has walls. It has a roof. It is a shield against the wind, the rain, and the unnerving sounds of the island night. That evening, you move your meager possessions inside. Your sea chest, your bedding, your tools, your precious Bible. You build a small fire near the entrance, the smoke curling up through a hole left in the roof. As darkness falls, you sit inside your small, smoky sanctuary, the firelight casting a warm, comforting glow on the rough walls. For the first time since the Cinque Ports vanished over the horizon, you feel a fragile sense of security, a feeling almost like peace. You wrap yourself in your bedding, the familiar smell of tarred canvas a small comfort. and you fall into a deep, exhausted sleep, the deepest sleep you have had since arriving on the island. You are awoken not by a sound, but by a feeling, a faint, skittering sensation across your feet. You lie perfectly still in the darkness, your heart suddenly pounding. Was it just a dream? Then you feel it again. Something small, quick, and alive running over your legs. You sit bolt upright, reaching for your knife. You hold your breath and listen, and then you hear it, a faint scratching sound from the corner where you stored your small supply of dried goat meat. Then another sound, a high-pitched, nervous squeaking, answered by another and another. The darkness is not empty. Your hut is filled with unseen movement. With trembling hands, you reach for the fire and toss on a handful of dry leaves. The flames flare up, casting a sudden stark light across the small space. And you see them, rats, not one or two, but dozens. They freeze for a moment in the sudden light, their small black eyes glittering like beads, their long tails twitching nervously. They are everywhere. On your food supplies, in your bedding, scurrying along the rough walls. They are larger and bolder than any ship rats you have ever encountered. This is their island, you realize with a sickening lurch, and you have just built your house in the middle of their kingdom. You let out a roar of mingled terror and rage, grabbing a piece of firewood and lashing out wildly. The rats explode into a frenzy of motion, scattering into the shadows, vanishing through unseen cracks in the walls. But you know they are still there, just beyond the firelight, watching, waiting. Sleep is impossible now. You spend the rest of the night sitting by the fire, your knife in hand, listening to the constant, unnerving rustle and squeak of your unseen, unwelcome guests. The following days become a new kind of hell. The rats are relentless. They are a plague. You try to seal the cracks in your hut, but they find new ways in. You try to store your food in your sea chest, but they gnaw at the wood, their sharp teeth leaving trails like tiny chisels. They contaminate your precious water cask. Worst of all is the night. As soon as the fire burns low, they return. They swarm over your sleeping form. You are constantly jolted awake by the vile sensation of their small bodies running across your skin. And then comes the ultimate violation. They begin to nibble at your exposed hands and feet as you sleep, their sharp teeth leaving small, stinging wounds. You are forced to sleep fitfully, your hands tucked under your body, your feet wrapped in extra layers of goatskin, constantly twitching at every imagined movement. You realize you are locked in a desperate war. Your small hut, which was meant to be your sanctuary, your fortress against the wilderness, has become a besieged outpost. Your enemies are small, numerous, and utterly without fear. They are consuming your food, they are stealing your sleep, and they are slowly, relentlessly driving you towards madness. The need for shelter and security, one of the most basic human drives, is now in direct conflict with the relentless, invasive presence of these creatures. You have survived the ocean, you have found water, you have made fire, but you understand now that your greatest battle might be fought right here, in the darkness of your own small hut, against an enemy you cannot possibly defeat through simple strength alone. You must find a new weapon. You must find an ally. The war against the rats is a nightly, exhausting, and ultimately losing battle. They are too numerous, too bold. They steal your sleep, contaminate your dwindling supplies, and gnaw at the edges of your sanity. The small crabs and shellfish you find on the beach, the tough wild turnips you dig inland, they are barely enough to keep you alive, let alone give you the strength to fight this infestation or endure the long days. You need more. You need meat. You need the goats. Your musket. It lies beside you in the hut, a heavy, reassuring presence of iron and wood. It is your one true piece of European power in this wild kingdom, the tool that separates you from the simple beasts. You brought with you a good supply of powder in sealed horns and a heavy bag of lead shot. But you know, with the chilling certainty of a man counting his last coins, that this supply is finite. Every shot fired is a shot you cannot get back. Every miss is a small step closer to starvation. The musket is not a solution. It is a temporary reprieve, a tool to be used with the utmost care and precision. You begin your hunt not with reckless abandon, but with the patient observation of a predator learning its prey. You spend days away from the coast, climbing the high ridges, moving slowly, silently, watching the feral goats. They are beautiful, wild creatures, descendants of animals left here decades ago by Spanish sailors. They are perfectly adapted to this mountainous island, their movements swift and impossibly agile on the steep, rocky slopes. They are wary, their senses sharp, constantly scanning for danger. Hunting them will not be easy. You learn their habits. You find their preferred grazing spots in the higher meadows. You discover the narrow, hidden paths they use to move between the valleys. You learn the direction of the prevailing wind and how to approach them without giving away your scent. This is the true hunt, the quiet gathering of knowledge, the slow mapping of another creature's life. Finally, you choose your moment. You find a small group grazing on a high, grassy ledge. The wind is in your favor. You begin your stalk, moving with infinite slowness, using the rocks and sparse bushes for cover. Your heart pounds against your ribs, not with fear this time, but with the focused, intense adrenaline of the hunter. Minutes stretch into an hour. You crawl the last 50 yards on your belly, the rough ground scraping your already raw knees. You are close enough. You carefully prime the pan of your musket, ensuring the fine powder is dry. You pour a measured charge down the barrel, ramming the lead ball home. You raise the heavy weapon, resting the long barrel on a rock to steady your aim. You sight down the barrel at a young male goat, slightly separated from the others. Your hands are steady. You hold your breath, and you squeeze the trigger. The explosion shatters the profound silence of the mountain. A cloud of white smoke erupts from the muzzle, momentarily blinding you. The recoil slams the butt of the musket hard against your shoulder. When the smoke clears, you see the goat has fallen. The others have vanished, scattering instantly into the rocks. A surge of pure, primal triumph washes over you. You have done it. You scramble up the slope to your prize. The shot was clean. You say a quiet word of thanks, the ritual ingrained, before beginning the grim but necessary work of the butcher. You use your flint knife, its edge honed sharp, to skin the animal and gut it, saving the valuable hide and the edible organs. The carcass is still heavy, a burden you must carry back down the treacherous slopes to your camp. That evening you feast. You roast the fresh goat meat over your fire, the smell rich and intoxicating, a scent you realize you have dreamed of for weeks. The taste is sublime, the best meal you have ever eaten. It is the taste of success, the taste of survival earned through skill and patience. For the first time, you feel a flicker of something akin to mastery over this island. But as you sit by the fire, the gnawing satisfaction in your belly is accompanied by a new, colder anxiety. You take out your powder horn and your bag of shot. You carefully measure what remains. You have enough, perhaps, for 20 more shots. Maybe 30, if you are frugal with the powder. It seems like a lot, but how long must you survive here? A month? A year? A decade? Each successful hunt is also a step closer to the day your musket becomes a useless piece of iron. The conflict is stark, your desperate daily hunger versus the finite, irreplaceable resource of your ammunition. You cannot afford to miss. You cannot afford to waste a single shot. You realize the goats are not just your food source, they are your clock. Your survival is measured in the dwindling number of lead balls in your pouch. You must learn another way. You must learn to hunt as the island demands, not just with fire and lead, but with cunning and endurance. You must learn to run them down. You bank the fire, the rich taste of roasted goat still on your tongue. The immediate threat of starvation has been pushed back, but the long-term war for survival stretches before you, stark and uncertain. Your musket has bought you time, but you know, with a chilling certainty, that time is the one resource you cannot afford to waste. The war against the rats is a losing one. Your small hut on the beach, intended as a sanctuary, has become a nightly battleground. Sleep is a distant memory, replaced by the constant, unnerving skittering in the darkness, the feeling of tiny feet on your skin, and the gnawing destruction of your precious food stores. The rats are consuming not just your supplies, but your sanity. You realize, with a grim clarity, that you cannot win this war by fighting alone. You must change the terrain. You must find allies. Your explorations have shown you the island's interior, drier, less infested, and closer to your reliable source of fresh water. You make the decision to abandon the beach hut, leaving it to the rats and the damp sea air. You choose a new site, higher up, in a small clearing sheltered by pimento trees, near the spring you discovered. Here, you will build a new fortress. The work is familiar now, but you approach it with a new determination. You fell the straight, aromatic pimento wood with your hatchet, trimming the branches, creating sturdy posts. You build not one, but 2 huts this time, connected by a small, covered passage. One will be for sleeping, deliberately kept clean and free of food scraps. The other will be your kitchen and workshop, a place where the inevitable mess of cooking and crafting can be contained. You build the walls tighter, chinking the gaps between the logs with mud and moss, making it harder for unwanted guests to enter. The roofs are thatched thickly with layers of grass and leaves. It is a more permanent, more defensible home. It is while gathering materials for your new home that you first truly notice them. Cats. Wild, feral cats, slinking through the undergrowth, their coats mottled like the shadows, their eyes gleaming with a hunter's intensity. They are descendants, no doubt, of ship's cats left behind by earlier visitors, just like the goats and the rats. They are lean, wary, and utterly wild. At first, you see them simply as another part of the island's strange ecosystem. But then, an idea sparks, born of desperation and observation. The rats fear them. Where the cats roam, the rats are scarce. An enemy of your enemy could become your friend. You begin a slow, patient campaign of diplomacy. After a successful goat hunt, you leave small scraps of raw meat and fat on a flat stone some distance from your new huts. You retreat and watch from a distance. Tentatively at first, then with growing boldness, the feral cats emerge from the forest edge. They snatch the offerings and vanish back into the shadows. You repeat this process day after day. You never approach them directly. You never make sudden movements. You simply leave the food, a silent offering, a gesture of goodwill. Weeks pass. The cats become accustomed to your presence, associating your scent not with danger, but with food. They begin to linger near your clearing, watching you with their unblinking yellow eyes. The breakthrough comes one evening, as you sit outside your hut, mending a goatskin pouch. A large, scarred tomcat cautiously approaches. It does not run when you look up. It simply sits a few yards away, watching you. Slowly, carefully, you toss it a small piece of cooked goat meat left over from your supper. It snatches the meat and retreats, but not far. It eats, watching you all the while. Over the next few months, this fragile truce blossoms into a strange and mutually beneficial alliance. More cats begin to frequent your clearing. They learn that your presence means food and, perhaps, a measure of safety from the island's other dangers. And you learn the immense value of their silent, deadly efficiency. They begin to hunt around your huts. The constant, maddening skittering and squeaking of the rats begins to diminish. You start finding small, grim trophies left near your doorway, the remains of their nightly hunts. And then, the greatest miracle of all, you begin to sleep. Truly sleep. For the first time in perhaps a year, You can lie down in your sleeping hut without the constant, crawling dread of the rats. The cats patrol the perimeter, silent, furry guardians against the darkness. Occasionally, one will even enter your hut, finding a warm spot near the embers of your fire, its soft, rhythmic purring, a sound more comforting than any psalm. You have not conquered the rats. You have simply changed the ecological balance in your small corner of the kingdom. You have turned one introduced species against another, using the island's own accidental inhabitants to restore a measure of peace to your life. You sit outside your new, sturdier home, the fire burning brightly, a half-dozen semi-tamed cats dozing nearby. The overwhelming rat infestation, which had threatened to break your spirit, has been pushed back. You look at these sleek, silent hunters, your unlikely allies, and you feel a profound sense of satisfaction. You have not just endured, you have adapted. You have used your intelligence, your patience, and your understanding of the natural world to solve a problem that brute force could not overcome. It is a small victory in your long, solitary war, but it is a victory nonetheless, and it tastes almost as sweet as survival itself. The inevitable day arrives with a quiet, hollow click. You prime your musket for a hunt, reach into your powder horn, and find only a few pitiful grains rattling at the bottom. It is gone. Your supply of gunpowder, husbanded so carefully over 2, perhaps 3 years, is finally exhausted. The thunderous voice of European technology, your primary weapon against this wilderness, has fallen silent. The musket is now just a heavy, useless piece of iron and wood. Panic, cold and sharp, grips you for a moment. The goats are your life. Without them, you will starve. How can you possibly hunt these swift, wary creatures now? Your traps are crude, unreliable. Your skill with a knife is useless against an animal that can vanish up a sheer rock face in the blink of an eye. Your first attempts are failures, almost comical in their futility. You try stalking them, creeping through the undergrowth like a hunter of deer. But the goats, born and bred on these slopes, sense your clumsy approach from a mile away. They watch you, alert and curious, until you get just close enough to raise a desperate hope, and then they bound away, their movements effortless and mocking, leaving you panting and defeated on the hillside. You realize, with a grim certainty, that you cannot hunt them like a European. You do not have the weapon for it. You must hunt them like something else. You must hunt them like a wolf. You must learn to run them down. The transformation is slow, painful, and almost unbelievable. You begin to train your body, pushing it beyond limits you never imagined possible. You abandon your worn-out sailor's boots, the stiff leather a hindrance on the uneven ground. You learn to run barefoot, your feet toughening, callousing, becoming as sensitive and as resilient as the pads of an animal, learning to read the texture of the earth, the grip of the rock. You run every day. At first, you are slow, clumsy, your lungs burning in the thin mountain air, your city dwellers' muscles screaming in protest. But you persist. You chase the goats not with the hope of catching them, but simply to follow, to learn their paths, their rhythms, their endurance. You learn to read the terrain, to anticipate how a goat will swerve around an obstacle, where it will pause for breath. You learn to conserve your own energy, to find a steady ground-eating pace that you can maintain for hours. Months pass. Your body changes. The soft flesh melts away, leaving only hard, lean muscle, toughened sinew. Your lungs expand, adapting to the thin air. Your speed increases. Your stamina becomes immense. You are no longer just a man. You are becoming a creature of the island, shaped by its demands, honed by its challenges. The day of your first true success arrives unexpectedly. You are pursuing a young buck, a chase that has lasted for over an hour, up steep slopes and down treacherous ravines. You are exhausted, your body screaming for rest, but the goat is tiring too. You see it stumble slightly on a loose rock, a flicker of opportunity. You summon a final, desperate reserve of strength and push yourself forward, closing the gap. The goat sees you coming and makes a final, desperate leap towards a rocky outcrop. But you are faster. You launch yourself forward, your hands closing around its hind leg. You both tumble to the ground in a tangle of limbs and dust. The struggle is brief. You are stronger now. You kill the goat quickly, cleanly, with your knife. You lie there for a long moment, panting, your heart hammering against your ribs, the metallic taste of exhaustion in your mouth. You look at the goat, at your own scraped and bleeding hands. You have done it. You have hunted and killed with nothing but your own body, your own endurance, your own will. As you carry your prize back down the mountain, a new feeling settles within you. It is not just the satisfaction of a successful hunt, the relief from hunger. It is a sense of profound, almost terrifying power. You have shed the last vestiges of your reliance on the tools of the old world. You have adapted. You have become the predator. The conflict is no longer your human limitations versus the demands of the island. You have met those demands. You have transformed yourself. You are no longer just surviving on this island. You are beginning to master it. You have become the master of the chase. The sun, the salt, the thorny undergrowth. They wage a relentless war not just on your body, but on the last vestiges of your old life. Your sturdy English sailor's clothes, the familiar canvas trousers and woolen jacket you arrived in, are slowly surrendering. The fabric, constantly soaked by rain or sweat and dried under the harsh sun, grows thin, brittle. Seams unravel, patches wear through, revealing more patches beneath. Soon, they are little more than rags, offering scant protection against the elements or the sharp thorns that guard the island's interior paths. You are facing the prospect of becoming truly wild, naked against the wind and the Sunday. The solution lies all around you, in the creatures you now hunt with such hard-won skill, the goats. Their hides, thick and durable, are the island's natural cloth, its sturdy, living fabric. But transforming the raw, bloody skin of a dead animal into something wearable is a craft you never learned in your life at sea. It is another lesson the island demands you master, a slow, often frustrating, and deeply practical education in self-sufficiency. The process begins after a successful hunt. Skinning the goat is now a familiar, almost automatic task, performed with your sharp flint knife. But the hide itself requires immense labor. You must first flesh it, scraping away every last trace of fat, muscle, and membrane from the inner surface. You use your knife, or perhaps a sharp stone found on the beach, working for hours under the sun, the repetitive scraping motion a new rhythm in your solitary life. The smell is raw, primal, the smell of the butcher's yard. Once cleaned, the hide must be cured to prevent it from rotting and turning stiff as a board. Your methods are crude, learned perhaps from dimly remembered sailors' tales or simply through trial and error. You might stretch the hide tightly on a wooden frame and leave it to dry slowly in the shade, away from the direct Sunday. You might rub it vigorously with the animal's own rendered fat, or even its brains, substances that help to soften the fibers. It is messy, smelly work, requiring patience and a strong stomach. When the hide is finally cured, supple, strong, and retaining a faint, musky scent, the tailoring begins. You possess no fine needles or silken thread. Your tools are improvised from the island's meager offerings and your salvaged kit. You find a large nail washed ashore from some long-forgotten shipwreck, and you painstakingly sharpen its point against a smooth stone until it becomes a serviceable awl. For thread, you cut thin, strong strips from the edges of the cured hide itself, or perhaps you carefully harvest the long, tough sinews from the legs of the goats you hunt. You cut the stiff hides into rough shapes, rectangles for a jerkin, tubes for leggings, a simple circle for a cap. Your stitches are large, clumsy, uneven. The resulting garments are crude, shapeless, bearing little resemblance to the tailored clothes of your former life. They are heavy, stiff at first, and smell strongly of goat, but they are also incredibly durable. They protect you from the scratching thorns as you push through the undergrowth. They shield your skin from the relentless Sunday. They offer a surprising degree of warmth against the chill of the island nights and the damp sea mists. You fashion yourself a complete wardrobe, a conical cap to keep the sun from your eyes, a sleeveless jerkin, rough breeches that reach your knees. You even make crude coverings for your feet from pieces of hide, protecting them from the sharp rocks. You stand before a calm pool of water, catching your reflection. The man looking back is a stranger. Gone is the clean-shaven sailor in his neat, if-worn, uniform. In his place is a wild figure, clad head to foot in rough, dun-coloured goatskin, his hair long and matted, his beard thick and untamed. You look less like Alexander Selkirk, sailing master in Her Majesty's service, and more like one of the ancient Britons your ancestors fought against. The loss of your old clothes feels like the shedding of your last connection to the civilized world. You have surrendered your appearance, your outward identity, to the demands of this place, but as you feel the sturdy, protective weight of the goatskin against your skin, you also feel a deep, quiet satisfaction. You did not find these clothes, you made them. You transformed the raw material of the island into the very fabric of your survival, using nothing but your own hands and your own ingenuity. The conflict between the civilized comforts you have lost and the practical necessities of your current life finds a strange resolution. You have lost the appearance of a gentleman, but you have gained the profound, hard-won competence of a true master of your own small world. Years pass. How many? You try to keep track by cutting notches on a pimento tree near your hut, but the seasons blend into one another, and time itself seems to stretch and warp in this place of profound solitude. You have mastered the physical challenges of the island. You can hunt the swiftest goat, find water in the driest season, and build a shelter that withstands the winter storms. Your body is strong, hardened, adapted, but a new, more insidious enemy has emerged, one that cannot be outrun or overcome with mere physical strength. It is the silence, the crushing, absolute silence of being utterly alone. The world outside your small clearing offers no conversation, only the repetitive sounds of nature, the wind in the trees, the cry of seabirds, the distant crash of waves. The lack of human interaction begins to work on your mind like a slow, patient erosion. You find yourself forgetting words, simple words. You startle at the sound of your own voice when you accidentally speak aloud after days of silence. Your thoughts, once sharp and ordered like the lines on a nautical chart, begin to feel slow, sluggish, adrift. You realize you are in danger of losing not just your connection to the world of men, but the very tools that make you human, language, and coherent thought. You must fight back. You must create your own society, your own conversation, even if you are its only member. Your Bible. It is one of the few precious objects you salvaged from the Cinque Ports, its leather cover worn smooth by the sea air and your own hands. It becomes your anchor, your lifeline to the world of words and ideas. You begin a new ritual. Every evening, after the day's work is done, you sit by your fire, open the book, and you read. Aloud. At first, your voice is a rough, hesitant croak, unfamiliar even to your own ears. The familiar King James English sounds strange, almost foreign in this wild place. But you persist. You read the Psalms, their ancient poetry, a comfort and a connection to the faith of your childhood. You read the stories of the Old Testament, tales of exile, of hardship, of faith tested in the wilderness. You read them slowly, deliberately, forcing your tongue to form the shapes of the words, forcing your mind to follow the complex thread of the narratives. The sound of your own voice echoing in the small clearing is a strange comfort. It pushes back the immense silence. It fills the emptiness. It is proof that you are still here, still human, still capable of thought and expression. You begin to sing. The rough, unaccompanied sound of your voice, lifting the old Scottish psalms you learned as a boy, feels like an act of defiance against the island's indifference. The melodies connect you to a past, to a community, to a world beyond this lonely shore. And you talk. You talk to your companions, the semi-tamed cats that now share your clearing, sleeping near your fire, keeping the rats at bay. You address them by names you have given them. You recount the events of your day. You tell them stories from your past. It is, you know, a form of madness, but it is a necessary madness. It is a way to practice the simple, essential act of conversation, to keep the muscles of your language strong, even if your audience is only a sleepy feline audience. These acts, reading aloud, singing, talking to your cats, are not just for comfort, though they do provide a measure of it. They are a conscious, deliberate strategy. They are exercises for the mind, a way to keep the gears of thought turning, to prevent the slow, insidious slide into the vacant apathy that you know lurks just beyond the edges of your awareness. You are fighting to preserve the Alexander Selkirk who existed before this island, the man who knew how to speak and reason and belong to the world of men. You sit by your fire, the Bible open on your lap, your voice a low, steady murmur against the backdrop of the island night. The crushing weight of the silence, the constant pull towards letting go, towards surrendering to the vast emptiness, is a battle you must fight anew each day. It is a quiet, internal war, waged with the simple weapons of words and memory. Maintaining your sanity, you realize, requires as much deliberate effort and daily practice as hunting a goat or building a hut. It is the hardest, and perhaps the most important, work of all. You must be your own shipmate, your own priest, your own society. You must keep the fragile flame of your own human consciousness alive in the vast, silent darkness. You stand before the pimento tree, the one near your inland hut that you designated long ago as your calendar. With the sharp point of your flint knife, you carve another notch into the smooth grey bark. How many notches are there now? You try to count them, grouped into clusters of 7 for weeks, then larger marks for the turn of what you guess might be a month. But the lines blur together, a dense, overlapping record of days that have lost their individual meaning. Has it been 2 years? 3? Perhaps even 4? The precise accounting which once seemed so vital now feels almost arbitrary. Time itself has become fluid, stretching and contracting like the tides that wash the island's shores. Your life is no longer governed by the ship's bell or the rigid schedule of watches. It is governed by a different, older, and far more profound rhythm. The slow, subtle turning of the seasons on this isolated scrap of land. You have become intimately attuned to these changes, your senses sharpened by the absence of human distraction. You know it is spring not by a date on a calendar, but by the subtle shift in the angle of the sun, the slightly longer arc it traces across the sky. You know it by the return of certain seabirds to their nesting grounds on the high cliffs, their raucous cries, a sudden explosion of sound after the relative quiet of winter. You know it by the tender new shoots of green appearing on the wild turnip plants near your spring, a promise of fresh food after months of dried meat. Summer is the time of heat, of long, languid days where the sun beats down relentlessly. It is the time when the seals haul themselves out onto the beaches in great, noisy colonies, their barks echoing through your small kingdom. It is a time of abundance, when the hunting is easier and the days stretch long. Autumn brings a change in the wind, a cooler breeze that carries the scent of rain. The leaves on the few deciduous trees turn a brief, muted yellow before falling, a subtle echo of the fiery displays you remember from Scotland. It is a time of preparation, of smoking the last of the goat meat, of ensuring your huts are secure against the coming storms. Winter is not a season of snow and ice here. Not like the brutal winters of your homeland. It is a season of rain, of wind, of grey skies and shorter days. The sea becomes rougher, its waves crashing against the cliffs with a constant, thunderous roar. It is a time for staying close to your fire, for mending your goatskin clothes, for the quiet, internal work of enduring the darkness. You observe these cycles with the patient, detached eye of a scholar studying a strange new world. You have become a part of this rhythm. Your body knows when the rains are coming before the clouds gather. You can smell the subtle shift in the air that signals a change in the wind. You have, in a way, become as native to this island as the goats you hunt. But this deep connection to the island's time is also a source of profound psychological conflict. The human mind craves structure, linearity, the comforting illusion of progress marked by days, months, years. Your notched tree is a testament to this need, a fragile attempt to impose a human calendar onto a world that operates on an entirely different scale. Sometimes, staring at the endless, unchanging horizon, you feel a terrifying sense of timelessness. Have you been here forever? Will you be here forever? The days blur, the years merge. The Alexander Selkirk who stepped ashore from the Cinque Ports, the ambitious young sailing master, feels like a figure from a distant legend, a story about someone else. The man you are now is defined only by the rising and setting of the sun, the waxing and waning of the moon, the turning of the island's seasons. You run your finger over the dense collection of notches on the pimento tree. Each mark represents a day survived, a small victory against the crushing weight of solitude. But collectively, they represent something else, the immense, almost unimaginable span of time you have been lost to the world. You came from a world obsessed with clocks, with schedules, with the relentless forward march of history and commerce. You now live in a world where time is measured only by the slow growth of a tree, the return of the birds, the deepening lines on your own weathered face. The conflict is deep within you. It is the tension between the human need to measure and control time, and the profound, humbling reality of being adrift in its vast, indifferent ocean. You do not know how long you have been here. You only know that you are still here. And as you turn away from your wooden calendar and head back towards the quiet routine of your solitary day, that simple fact is both your greatest burden and your only comfort. Time grinds on, measured not just by the notches on your pimento tree, but by the slow erosion of hope. The initial, frantic belief that rescue was imminent has long since faded, replaced by the dull, heavy reality of your isolation. And yet, one ritual remains, performed with the stubborn, almost irrational persistence of a religious rite. It is the daily climb to the watchtower. You established it early on, during your first explorations, the high, rocky outcrop on the island's central ridge, the place that offers the widest, most commanding view of the surrounding sea. Over the years, you have made it your own. You have cleared the loose stones from the small summit, built a crude windbreak from rocks and driftwood, and worn a distinct path through the undergrowth with your daily passage. It is your pilgrimage site, your altar to a distant, almost forgotten god called rescue. You go there twice a day, without fail. Once at first light, as the sun turns the eastern horizon from grey to gold, and again in the late afternoon, as the sun begins its descent into the western sea. These are the times when the light is best for spotting the faint, improbable smudge of a sail against the glare. The climb itself is arduous, a steep ascent that leaves your breath short and your muscles burning, even after years of practice. But the physical effort is a necessary part of the ritual. It is a focusing act, a preparation of the body and mind for the vigil ahead. As you climb, you leave behind the small concerns of your huts, your goats, your cats. Your entire being narrows to this single vital purpose, to look. You reach the summit. The wind up here is always stronger, a constant, clean presence that whips at your goatskin clothes and clears your head. You find your familiar spot, bracing yourself against the windbreak, and you begin your watch. Your eyes, honed by years of scanning the sea for whales, now scan for a different kind of prey, a ship. You start in the north, slowly, methodically sweeping your gaze across the vast, unbroken arc of the horizon. East, south, west. You search for any interruption in the perfect line where the blue of the sea meets the blue of the sky. A flicker of white that might be canvas, a dark speck that might be a distant hull, a plume of smoke, though you know the age of steam is still far in the future. Most days, there is nothing, only the endless, rolling procession of waves, the distant flight of an albatross, the play of sunlight on the water. The sheer, overwhelming emptiness of the Pacific Ocean is a physical presence, a constant reminder of your insignificance. Sometimes, the world plays tricks on you. A particular cloud formation on the horizon can momentarily mimic the shape of sails. A glint of sunlight off a distant wave can look, for a heartbeat, like the flash of a spyglass. Your heart leaps, a sudden, painful surge of hope, but you have learned not to trust these phantoms. You watch, patiently, until the illusion dissolves, leaving the horizon as empty as before. The disappointment is a familiar ache, a dull thud in your chest, but you do not allow it to fester into despair. That way lies madness. You complete your scan, force yourself to take one last, thorough look, and then you begin the descent back down to your small world. This ritual, this twice-daily pilgrimage to the empty horizon, is perhaps the strangest and most difficult part of your survival. It is an act of pure, stubborn, almost irrational faith. Every day the ocean tells you that you are alone, that you are forgotten. Every day the statistical probability of a ship passing within sight of this tiny, uncharted island feels infinitesimally small. And yet, you climb. You look. You hope. Why? Perhaps it is the sailor's ingrained habit, the lifelong duty to keep watch. Perhaps it is a refusal to surrender completely to the island's timeless embrace. Or perhaps it is something deeper, a fundamental human need to believe that even in the vastest wilderness, connection is still possible. You stand at your watchtower as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the clouds in streaks of fire. The sea is empty. Again, your unwavering hope feels like a small, flickering candle flame held against the immense, indifferent wind of probability. It is a conflict fought not with axe or knife, but with the quiet, stubborn resilience of your own spirit. You do not know if your vigil will ever be rewarded. You only know that as long as you can still climb this ridge, as long as you can still lift your eyes to the horizon, you will continue to look. It is the last thread connecting you to the world you left behind, and you will not let it break. Years melt into one another, marked only by the endless cycle of seasons and the growing forest of notches on your calendar tree. You have become a creature of routine, your days governed by the hunt, the tending of your small turnip patch, the mending of your goatskin clothes, and the twice-daily pilgrimage to your watchtower on the high ridge. Hope for rescue has not died, but it has retreated deep within you, a small banked ember rather than a burning flame. The empty horizon has become the normal state of the world. Then, one clear, bright morning, the impossible happens. You are at your lookout post, performing your ritual scan of the sea, north, east, south, and then you freeze. Your heart stops, then slams against your ribs with a force that makes you gasp. A sail. It is not a cloud. It is not a trick of the light. It is real. A distinct, unmistakable fleck of white against the deep blue of the Pacific. Miles out, but undeniably there. After years of staring at emptiness, the sight is so shocking, so overwhelming, that your mind struggles to accept it. You raise a trembling hand to shield your eyes, straining to see. Yes, it is a ship, a European vessel, her sails full, heading roughly in your direction. A wild, almost violent surge of pure, unadulterated joy explodes within you. Rescue! After all this time, after all the despair, a ship has finally come. Tears stream down your face, hot and unfamiliar. You let out a whooping cry, the sound startlingly loud in the silence, echoing off the rocks around you. Your mind races. You must make a signal. You scramble down from your perch, your movements clumsy with adrenaline, and begin gathering dry wood, piling it high on the flat rock you had designated years ago for this very purpose. You need smoke, a great plume of it that cannot be missed. You fumble with your tinderbox, your hands shaking so badly you can barely strike the flint. As you work, your eyes keep darting back to the sea, tracking the ship's progress. She is closer now, close enough for you to begin making out her details through the clear air. She is a large vessel, larger than the sink ports. Her rigging looks unfamiliar. Spanish? You pause, the tinderbox falling from your suddenly numb fingers. Spanish. The word is a douse of icy water on the fire of your hope. You raise your hand again, squinting hard. You see the flag now, a small, distant banner snapping in the breeze. The colours are difficult to make out, but the design, the lion and castle, it is unmistakably the flag of Spain. Your enemy. The joy drains out of you, replaced by a cold, sickening wave of terror. These are not rescuers. These are potential captors. You are an Englishman, a privateer, found marooned on an island the Spanish consider their own territory. If they find you, capture is the best you can hope for. More likely, they will see you as a spy, a poacher, a pirate, and your end will be swift and brutal. A rope, or years rotting in a Lima prison mine. You abandon the signal fire instantly. Your desperate need to be seen is replaced by an even more desperate need to hide. You scramble back down the path from the watchtower, your heart pounding not with hope, but with pure animal fear. You race to your main camp, near the spring. Your campfire, which has been your constant companion, your symbol of civilization, is now a terrible liability, its thin wisp of smoke, a potential beacon betraying your presence. Frantically, you douse the fire, scattering the embers, covering the ashes with damp earth and leaves. You hide your tools, your goatskin bedding, anything that looks man-made, concealing them deep within the undergrowth. You grab your musket, useless without powder, but still a symbol of defiance, and retreat into the deepest, darkest part of the forest you know, wedging yourself into a crevice between two great, moss-covered boulders. You wait. You listen. Your world shrinks to the sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the call of a bird, every noise amplified, every shadow a potential threat. Hours pass. Does the ship see your huts? Will they send a boat ashore for water? Your mind is a storm of fearful possibilities. Finally, in the late afternoon, you cautiously make your way back to your hidden watchtower. You peer over the rocks. The sea is empty. The Spanish ship is gone. It sailed past, perhaps without ever noticing the small signs of your existence, or perhaps deciding this insignificant island was not worth the trouble of landing. You collapse onto the ground, weak with a relief that feels almost as draining as despair. You have survived, but the encounter leaves a deep and bitter scar. Rescue is no longer a simple, shining hope. It is a complex, dangerous thing. Not every sail on the horizon means salvation. Months later, perhaps even a year, it happens again. Another sail, another surge of desperate hope, and again the crushing, terrifying realization, Spanish colors. You repeat the frantic ritual of hiding, of extinguishing your fire, of praying that the world will pass you by. You sit alone in the twilight after the second ship has vanished, the taste of fear still metallic in your mouth. The desperate desire for rescue, the very core of your endurance, is now locked in a terrible conflict with the realization that human contact itself might be your greatest danger. You are trapped in a profound and bitter irony. Your only hope lies with your own countrymen, but the vast Pacific, ruled largely by your enemies, makes their arrival a near impossibility. You are surrounded by ships that could end your isolation, but they are ships you must hide from. Your solitude is no longer just a state of being, it has become your only shield. February 1st, 1709. The climb is slower today. Your body, though hardened by years of island life, feels the weight of more than just your goatskin clothes. It feels the weight of time. 4 years and 4 months, by the rough count of notches on your calendar tree. 1,580 days, give or take, since you watched the chink ports vanish. Hope for rescue is no longer a burning fire. It is a cold, banked ember, a habit you maintain more through discipline than any real expectation. You reach your familiar perch on the high ridge, the wind whipping at your long, matted hair and beard. You settle into your routine, bracing yourself against the windbreak, and begin the slow, methodical scan of the immense, empty horizon. North, east, south, and then you freeze. Your breath catches in your throat. Your heart gives a single, painful jolt. Out on the vast, blue canvas of the Pacific, where there has been nothing but waves for longer than you can remember, there is something else. 2 distinct dark specks. Ships. Your first reaction is not joy, but a cold, learned caution. Twice before, you have seen sails. Twice before, that surge of hope turned to icy terror when you recognized the colors of Spain. You squint, your eyes straining against the distance and the glare. Are they Spanish again? Come to finally claim this island and its solitary, unwanted inhabitant. But these ships look different. Their rigging seems familiar. And the flags, they are too distant to make out clearly, but they are not the bold red and gold of Spain. Could they be? You fumble for the small, precious spyglass you salvaged, its brass tarnished by the sea air. You raise it to your eye, your hand trembling so violently you can barely hold it steady. You focus the lens, desperately trying to bring the distant image into clarity, and then you see it, unmistakably, flying from the masthead of the lead ship, the red ensign, the flag of England. The world tilts. The years of ingrained hopelessness, the quiet resignation you have cultivated like a shield, shatter in an instant. A sound rips from your throat, a raw, inarticulate cry that is part sob, part roar. English ships. After 4 years and 4 months, your own people have come. You are no longer a weary hermit. You are a man possessed. You scramble down from the watchtower, your movements reckless, clumsy with an adrenaline you haven't felt in years. You race towards your camp, towards the spot you designated long ago for this very moment. Fire. You need fire. You need smoke. A signal they cannot possibly miss. Your hands shake as you gather the driest wood, the armfuls of dry grass you have kept aside. You fumble with your tinderbox, striking the flint against the steel with frantic, inefficient blows. Sparks fly. Fail. Strike again. Fail. Come on. You force yourself to take a deep, calming breath, recalling the patient ritual of survival. Strike. A spark catches the charcloth. You blow gently, desperately, feeding the tiny ember into a flame, then into a blaze. You pile on the wood, adding green leaves and damp moss to create a thick, billowing column of white smoke that rises straight into the clear blue sky. It is a desperate prayer made of fire and air, a signal flare launched from the heart of your solitude. You race back up to the watchtower, your lungs burning, your eyes fixed on the 2 distant ships. Have they seen it? Are they continuing on their course? Or, Yes, they are turning. Both ships are altering their course, their bows pointing directly towards your island, towards your plume of smoke. Tears stream down your face, cutting clean paths through the grime and sun-darkened skin. You sink to your knees on the rocky outcrop, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions so powerful it leaves you weak and trembling. Hope. Not the cautious, guarded hope you have lived with, but a wild, fierce, and overwhelming certainty. They have seen you. They are coming. Your long, silent vigil is over. Your sentence is served. You watch the two English ships grow steadily larger on the horizon, their sails like the wings of angels. The crushing weight of 4 years of absolute solitude begins to lift, replaced by a feeling so intense, so profound, it feels almost like pain. It is the feeling of rejoining the human race. The conflict between your unwavering hope and the overwhelming probability of being forgotten has just ended in the most improbable, miraculous victory. You watch from the high ridge as the two English ships, the Duke and the Duchess, carefully navigate the entrance to your bay and drop anchor. The sight is still almost too much to bear, a dream threatening to dissolve if you blink. After years of praying for this moment, its arrival feels sudden, shocking, almost violent in its intensity. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage. You see a small boat being lowered from the larger ship, the Duke. Men climb down into it. They are rowing towards your beach, towards you. Slowly, hesitantly, you begin your descent from the watchtower. Your legs feel strangely weak, unsteady. You are not running towards them with joyous abandon. A profound, paralyzing shyness, born of 4 years of absolute solitude, holds you back. What will they think of you? What will you say? The simple act of meeting another human being now feels like the most complex and terrifying challenge you have ever faced. You reach the edge of the forest, just as the boat's keel scrapes onto the sand. Several sailors jump out, armed with muskets, their eyes scanning the beach and the tree line with wary professionalism. They are privateers like you once were. They are expecting danger, perhaps Spanish soldiers, perhaps hostile natives. They are not expecting you. You take a deep breath and step out from the cover of the trees onto the open beach. The sailors freeze. They stare. Their mouths fall open. You see their hands tighten on their muskets. Their initial reaction one of fear, as if they have just encountered some strange, unknown beast. And you see yourself, for a moment, through their eyes. You are clad head to foot in rough, ill-fitting goatskins stitched together with crude thongs. Your hair and beard have grown wild and matted, reaching almost to your waist. Your skin is burned nearly black by years of Sunday. You are barefoot, your feet broad and calloused like leather. You must look like a creature from a myth, a wild man emerged from the forest's depths. You try to speak, to call out a greeting in your own tongue, but the words catch in your throat. Your voice, accustomed only to the quiet sounds of reading aloud or talking to your cats, comes out as a rough, guttural croak, barely recognizable as human speech. You raise a hand, a gesture of peace, of shared kinship. One of the sailors, braver than the rest, takes a cautious step forward. Who are you? He calls out, his voice tight with astonishment. You try again, forcing the words out, dredging them up from a deep, rusty well of memory. Englishman, you manage to rasp. Alexander Selkirk, sailing master, Cinque Ports. The name hangs in the air. The sailors exchange stunned glances. The Cinque Ports, a ship lost years ago. This wild man claims to be its master. An officer steps forward from the boat, a man with a keen, intelligent face and an air of quiet authority. This must be the captain, Woods Rogers. He studies you intently, his gaze sharp but not unkind. Selkirk, he says, his voice carrying clearly across the sand. We had heard the Cinque Ports was lost. How long have you been on this isle? You struggle to calculate, to translate the endless cycle of seasons into the cold arithmetic of years. 4 years, you finally manage, the words still feeling foreign, clumsy. And 4 months. A collective gasp goes through the sailors. 4 years, alone. It is a span of time almost beyond comprehension. Captain Rogers steps ashore, approaching you slowly, cautiously, as one might approach a startled animal. 4 years, he repeats, his voice filled with a quiet awe. My God, man, how have you survived? The question opens a floodgate. A torrent of words, of experiences, of loneliness locked away for so long, tries to pour out of you, but your rusty voice cannot keep pace. You stumble over your words, mixing English with scraps of Spanish you knew, perhaps even gestures, trying to convey the immensity of your solitude, the story of the goats, the rats, the cats, the fires, the watching. The sailors listen, their initial fear replaced by a profound, almost reverent pity and wonder. They see the goatskin clothes, the wild hair, the raw calluses on your feet. They see the undeniable proof of your ordeal etched onto your very being. Captain Rogers places a hand gently on your shoulder. The simple, unexpected human contact is a shock, an electric jolt that seems to awaken nerves long dormant. You are safe now, Master Selkirk, he says, his voice kind. Your vigil is over. We will take you home. Home. The word itself is a physical blow, releasing a wave of emotion so powerful it threatens to overwhelm you. Tears, hot and unfamiliar, blur your vision. The careful, stoic mask you have worn for 4 years finally cracks. You allow yourself to be led towards the boat. You look back one last time at the small, rough huts you built, at the familiar curve of the bay, at the high ridge where you kept your lonely watch. This island, your prison, your kingdom, the place that has been your entire world for so long, you are leaving it. You step into the boat, surrounded by the rough, comforting presence of other men, their voices a bewildering, welcome symphony after the great silence. As the boat pulls away from the shore, you are caught between 2 worlds. The wild, self-sufficient man you became, the solitary master of your island, is fading. The civilized man you once were, Alexander Selkirk of Lower Largo, is slowly, painfully being reborn. The conflict is no longer about survival against nature. It is the dizzying, terrifying, and overwhelmingly joyous shock of re-entry. You have returned to the world of men, and you have no idea who you are anymore. Stepping onto the deck of the privateer ship Duke is like stepping onto another planet. After 4 years where your only companions were the wind, the sea, and the cries of goats, the sudden immersion into the world of men is a violent, overwhelming, and profoundly disorienting shock. Your senses, honed by solitude, are completely unprepared. The noise is the first assault. The constant, purposeful chaos of a working ship, the shouts of officers, the rhythmic creak of the hull, the snap of sails, the bawdy laughter of sailors, it all crashes against your ears, a deafening cacophony after the deep, natural silence of your island. You find yourself flinching at sudden sounds, your nerves raw and exposed. The smells are equally bewildering. The familiar, clean scent of salt air is overpowered by the close, human smells of 80 unwashed bodies, of stale tobacco smoke, of tar, of cooking food, smells that are both repellent and strangely, achingly familiar, and the closeness. After years where your world stretched to the horizon, the cramped, confined space of the ship feels like a cage. You are constantly surrounded by people, their bodies jostling yours in the narrow passageways, their voices a constant murmur. The absolute privacy you took for granted is gone, replaced by the relentless, unavoidable presence of others. The simple comforts of civilization feel alien, almost threatening. They give you proper sailor's clothes, rough-spun but clean. Putting on shoes feels bizarre, confining, your bare feet, toughened like leather from years of running on rock and sand, protesting against the soft constraint. You stumble as you walk, your balance, perfected for the uneven terrain of the island, thrown off by the smooth rolling deck. The food is another shock. At the first meal, you are presented with a plate of salted beef and biscuit. The taste of salt, the complex flavor of cooked, preserved meat, is almost painfully intense after years of simple roasted goat. You eat slowly, cautiously, your stomach, accustomed to a simple diet, rebelling slightly against this sudden richness. The simple act of using a knife and fork feels clumsy, foreign, but the greatest struggle is with language. Your voice, used only for reading aloud or talking to your cats, is rough and halting. The words come slowly, awkwardly, like rusted tools pulled from a long-forgotten chest. You understand the English spoken around you, but forming your own sentences, finding the right words to express the complex flood of sensations and memories, is an immense, frustrating effort. The sailors are patient, mostly, their faces filled with a mixture of curiosity and pity as you struggle to reclaim your native tongue. Your story begins to spread through the ship like wildfire. The tale of the man left marooned for over 4 years, who survived alone, clad in goatskins, hunting with his bare hands. It is the stuff of legend. The sailors regard you with a kind of awe, whispering as you pass. They ask you hesitant questions, eager for details of your ordeal, of your island kingdom. You try to answer, but the gulf between your experience and their understanding feels impossibly wide. How can you explain the profound silence, the slow passage of years, the strange companionship of cats? You find yourself retreating into silence, overwhelmed by the effort of communication, by the sheer, exhausting presence of so many other people. You seek out quiet corners of the ship, finding a strange comfort in the familiar solitude of the bowsprit, watching the waves, even though the horizon is no longer empty. The conflict is deep within you. It is the clash between the wild, self-sufficient hermit you became and the civilized, social man you once were. You are grateful for your rescue, for the warmth, the food, the human company, but a part of you feels profoundly out of place, as if you are an animal brought back from the wilderness, blinking in the harsh, unfamiliar light of a cage. You are rejoining the world of men, but the ingrained habits of solitude, the watchfulness, the silence, the deep self-reliance, are proving hard to shed. You have returned, but you are not the same Alexander Selkirk who chose to leave the Chink ports. The island has marked you, changed you in ways you are only beginning to understand, and the slow, difficult process of learning to live among your own kind again feels almost as challenging as learning to live alone. Months pass aboard the Duke as she continues her privateering voyage along the coast of South America. Your body slowly recovers its strength, nourished by regular food and the relative comfort of shipboard life. Your mind, too, begins to heal. The constant presence of your shipmates, their rough talk and easy camaraderie, slowly pulls you back from the brink of profound solitude. Your voice regains its strength, your English its fluency, though the Scottish burr remains thick as ever. You are still quiet, still watchful, marked by your years alone, but you are undeniably rejoining the world of men. Captain Woods Rogers, an intelligent and observant commander, watches your recovery with keen interest. He sees beyond the goatskin-clad wild man his crew first encountered. He recognizes the skilled navigator beneath the matted beard, the seasoned sailing master hidden within the solitary survivor. He begins to engage you in conversations about charts, about currents, about the best places to hunt for Spanish prizes. He tests your knowledge, and he finds it not just intact, but honed to a razor's edge by years of solitary observation. One afternoon, as the Duke sails through calm seas, Rogers summons you to his cabin. "Master Selkirk," he begins, getting straight to the point, "I find myself in need of another reliable mate. My current second mate is lacking. You know these waters, you know ships, and God knows, you know survival. He looks you directly in the eye. The position is yours, if you'll take it. Second mate of the Duke, the offer is a turning point. It is not just a job, it is a restoration. It is an acknowledgement that the skilled professional you once were still exists beneath the wild exterior. You accept without hesitation, a surge of pride and purpose flooding back into you. Stepping back onto the quarterdeck as an officer feels both strange and perfectly natural. You shed the last of your goatskin clothes for a proper mate's uniform. You take up the tools of your old trade, the sextant, the charts, the speaking trumpet. The crew, who had treated you as a curiosity, now sees you differently. They see the authority in your bearing, the sharp competence in your commands. The transition is not seamless. Sometimes, standing watch under the vast, silent canopy of stars, the ingrained habits of your solitude return. You find yourself scanning the horizon not just for sails, but for the familiar shape of your island peaks. You sometimes startle at the sudden noise of the crew, your senses still attuned to the profound quiet you left behind. But the demands of your duty are a powerful anchor to this new reality. Your skills prove invaluable. You guide the Duke through treacherous coastal waters you remember from your time on the Cinque Ports. Your eye, trained by years of hunting goats, is uncannily sharp at spotting distant sails, and in the heat of action, the old instincts return. The climax of your return comes during the squadron's most audacious action. The capture of a heavily laden Spanish Manila galleon, the Nuestra Señora de la Encarnación y Desengaño, off the coast of Mexico. It is a fierce battle. Cannons roar, splinters fly, and the decks are slick with blood. You stand on the quarterdeck beside Captain Rogers, your voice clear and steady as you direct the maneuvering of the ship, your commands precise, your mind focused entirely on the complex, deadly dance of naval combat. In the heat of the boarding action, you are among the first over the railing, cutlass in hand. The wild man who ran barefoot chasing goats is now a privateer once more, fighting with a cold, professional fury. The prize is immensely rich, laden with Chinese silks and silver. The victory secures the fortune of the entire voyage. That evening, after the battle is won and the prize secured, you stand alone at the stern, watching the moon rise over the calm Pacific. The conflict that raged within you, the solitary hermit versus the skilled sailing master, has found a resolution. You have proven that the wild man and the professional sailor can coexist within the same skin. You are not the same man who was left on Mars or Tierra. Those 4 years of solitude have irrevocably shaped you, leaving you quieter, more self-reliant, perhaps wiser. But you are also still Alexander Selkirk, the navigator, the privateer. You have successfully navigated your way back, not just across the ocean, but back into your own life. You have rejoined the world, not as a broken curiosity, but as a competent, respected officer. You have returned. October 1711. The voyage home is long, but uneventful compared to the saga that preceded it. After nearly 8 years away from Britain, 4 years marooned, 2 more privateering with Woodes Rogers, the sight of the English coastline rising green and familiar from the grey Atlantic feels like awakening from a long, strange, and often terrifying dream. You stand on the deck of the Duke, now laden with the riches of captured Spanish prizes, and watch the familiar landmarks of the Thames estuary approach. You are finally, truly, returning home. Your arrival in London is not the quiet, anonymous return of an ordinary sailor. News of Woodes Rogers' successful circumnavigation and the capture of the Manila galleon has preceded you. But it is your story, the almost unbelievable tale of the man found marooned in goatskins after 4 years alone, that captures the city's imagination. You, Alexander Selkirk, become an overnight sensation, a living curiosity in the coffee houses and salons of the bustling metropolis. You find yourself sought after, invited into parlours where fine gentlemen and ladies ply you with wine and questions. They want to hear of your island, of your battles with rats, of your conversations with cats. They see you as a figure of romantic adventure, a hero who conquered the wilderness. The experience is profoundly disorienting. After years where your only reality was the raw, immediate struggle for survival, this world of polite society, of witty conversation, of powdered wigs and silk waistcoats, feels thin, artificial, almost unreal. You try to tell your story, but the words feel inadequate, clumsy. How can you explain the soul-crushing weight of absolute solitude to people who have never spent a single night truly alone? How can you describe the taste of desperation that led you to hunt barefoot, or the profound, almost religious, joy of nurturing a single spark into a life-saving fire? Your listeners are fascinated, but they hear only the adventure, the novelty. They do not hear the terror, the despair, the long, slow grinding away of your former self that happened on that lonely shore. They see the wild man who returned, but they cannot comprehend the quiet, disciplined sailor who had to die for that wild man to survive. One evening, you were introduced to a man named Richard Steele, a prominent writer and publisher known for his popular periodicals, The Tatler and The Spectator. He is a keen observer of human nature, and he listens to your story not just with idle curiosity, but with a deep, intelligent focus. He asks fewer questions about the goats and more about your thoughts, your feelings, your methods for preserving your sanity. A few days later, his account appears in his new publication, The Englishman. He introduces you to the world, a man clothed in goat skins, who looked wilder than the first owners of them. He describes your resourcefulness, your reading of the Bible, your taming of the cats. His account is sympathetic, respectful, and captures a sliver of the true strangeness of your ordeal. Steele's article amplifies your fame. You are pointed out in the street. Ballads are written about you. You are the man who lived alone on an island, the real-life embodiment of a fantastical tale. You sit in a noisy London tavern, a copy of The Englishman on the table before you, reading about yourself. The story is true in its facts, but it feels incomplete, sanitized. It speaks of your resourcefulness, but not of your terror. It speaks of your solitude, but not of the madness that constantly circled just beyond the firelight. It presents you as a hero, a symbol of British resilience. The conflict is no longer with nature or solitude, but with your own narrative. Your deeply personal, often grim, and morally complex experience is being transformed into a public spectacle, a simple, easily digestible story for the entertainment of a world that cannot possibly understand its true depth. You have survived the island, you have survived the sea, but you now face a new, more subtle challenge, surviving your own legend. 1719. Years have passed since your return to England. The initial blaze of public fascination has died down. You are no longer the celebrated curiosity of London's coffee houses. You have attempted to settle back into a semblance of a normal life, perhaps returning to your hometown of Lower Largo, or maybe even finding work again at sea, though the land holds you more tightly now. The raw, immediate memories of the island, the silence, the hunger, the terror, have softened slightly, smoothed over by the passage of time, though they remain a permanent landscape within your soul. You are Alexander Selkirk, the man who lived alone. That is your quiet, defining truth. Then, one day, a new book appears in the London print shops. It becomes an instant sensation, talked about everywhere, passed from hand to hand, read aloud in taverns and quiet parlours. Its title is long and descriptive, in the fashion of the age, The Life and Strange Surprising Adventures of Robinson Crusoe of York, Mariner, who lived 28 years, all alone in an uninhabited island on the coast of America, near the mouth of the great river of Orinoco, having been cast on shore by shipwreck, wherein all the men perished but himself. With an account how he was at last as strangely delivered by pirates. You hear of this book. You acquire a copy, perhaps, its pages smelling fresh from the press. And as you begin to read, a profound and deeply strange feeling washes over you. You are reading a story that is both intimately familiar and utterly alien. The author, a man named Daniel Defoe, a prolific writer known for his realistic style, has clearly heard your tale. He has likely read Richard Steele's account in The Englishman. He has absorbed the core of your experience, the solitary survival on a remote island, the goatskin clothes, the taming of animals, the reading of the Bible, the eventual rescue. But Defoe has done something else. He has taken the rough, often grim reality of your 4 years and transformed it into something different. His Crusoe is alone for an astonishing 28 years, not 4. His island is off the coast of South America, not in the Pacific. And most jarringly, Crusoe is cast ashore by shipwreck, the sole survivor of a terrible storm. You pause, staring at the page. Shipwreck. No, that wasn't it at all. Your mind flashes back to that furious argument on the deck of the Chink ports, to Captain Stradling's enraged face, to your own cold, calculated choice to be marooned rather than face certain death on a vessel riddled with worms and leaks. You remember watching her sail away, a decision that felt like madness but proved to be salvation. You learned, upon your return, the truth you had suspected all along. The Cinque Ports had foundered less than a year after leaving you, taking most of her crew, though not Stradling, to the bottom. Your stubbornness, your supposed pessimism, had saved your life. But Defoe's Crusoe is a passive victim of fate, not an active agent in his own survival. You continue reading. Defoe adds elements that exist nowhere in your own story. Cannibals who visit the island. A single, loyal companion named Friday, saved from the cannibals, whom Crusoe teaches English and Christianity. Crusoe himself is portrayed not just as a survivor, but as a kind of industrious, colonial master, building a fortified home, cultivating crops, imposing his own civilized order upon the wilderness. You read the book slowly, perhaps sounding out the words. It is a masterful piece of storytelling, compelling and vivid. But it is not your story. It is a fiction, a romance woven from the threads of your own harsh reality. Defoe has sanded down the rough edges, smoothed over the bleakest moments of despair, and added layers of adventure, religious contemplation, and even companionship that make the tale more palatable, more heroic, perhaps, to his readers. He has transformed your quiet, often brutal struggle for sanity into a triumphant narrative of English ingenuity and divine providence. He has turned your lonely, pragmatic existence into an allegory for the human condition. You close the book, the story finished. A complex mix of emotions swirls within you. Is it anger, resentment, flattery, perhaps just a profound sense of detachment? Your real, deeply personal, and often unheroic experience, the arguments, the justified fear, the deliberate choice, the long battle against despair, the quiet alliance with feral cats, has become the raw material for something else entirely. It has become a legend. The conflict is no longer within you, or against the sea, or against solitude. It is now between the quiet truth of your own lived life and the loud, powerful, and infinitely more famous story that is now being told in its place. You, Alexander Selkirk, are fated to become a footnote in your own tale. The world will forever know your experience not through your own halting words, but through the eloquent, dramatic, and ultimately fictional voice of Robinson Crusoe. And perhaps, you reflect, that is the final, strangest turn of your journey. You survived 4 years alone on an island, only to return and find yourself marooned once more, this time on the lonely shore of someone else's enduring fictional legacy. The year is 1712, or perhaps 1713. The precise dates have begun to blur again, losing their sharp edges, much like the stones smoothed by the endless wash of the tide. You are back in Lower Largo, the small fishing village on the coast of Fife where your life began. You sit on a weathered bench overlooking the cold, grey expanse of the North Sea. A body of water that seems impossibly small, tame, and crowded after the vast, wild emptiness of the South Pacific. You return to Scotland, a hero of sorts. Your share of the prize money from Woodes Rogers' voyage has made you comfortable, if not truly wealthy. You are Alexander Selkirk, the man who lived alone, the man whose story fills the broadsheets and inspires the novels. You have reintegrated, rejoined the world. You wear proper wool clothes again. You sleep in a soft bed under a solid roof. You eat your meals with a knife and fork. But the reintegration is incomplete. You walk the familiar streets of your childhood, but you feel like a ghost haunting your own past. The faces you knew are older now, or gone entirely. The concerns of the villagers, the price of herring, a neighbour's quarrel, the sermon on Sunday, feel trivial, distant, like the concerns of children. You attend church, you nod politely in the marketplace, but the easy companionship, the shared understanding of the world, is something you can no longer fully access. Sometimes, the noise of the village, the shouting children, the clatter of carts, the constant human chatter, becomes unbearable. You find yourself retreating, seeking out the quiet places, the empty shoreline at dawn, the high hills behind the town where the only sound is the wind and the cry of the gulls. You find yourself building small, simple shelters in the woods, places where you can sit alone for hours, watching, listening, feeling the old, familiar rhythm of solitude return. You look at your hands. They are softer now than they were on the island. The deep calluses faded, but the scars remain, from knives, from rocks, from the teeth of rats. They are the hands of a man who has known civilization and wilderness, and who bears the marks of both. Your mind drifts back, as it often does, to Tierra, not always to the terror or the despair. Sometimes, you remember the profound, almost mystical silence of the high ridges, the breathtaking view from your watchtower over an ocean untroubled by human sails. You remember the simple, clean satisfaction of building your huts with your own hands, the taste of water from the spring, the surprising warmth of your goatskin clothes. You remember the quiet companionship of your cats, their silent presence, a comfort in the vast emptiness. You remember the feeling of your own strength, the incredible speed and endurance you discovered as you learned to hunt like the animals themselves. That man, the wild man clad in goatskins, the solitary king of his own small world, he is still a part of you. He lives quietly beneath the surface of the respectable Scottish townsman you now appear to be. He is the part of you that feels restless indoors, that instinctively scans the horizon, that finds more solace in the howl of the wind than in polite conversation. You hear people talk about the book Robinson Crusoe. They speak of Defoe's hero, of his ingenuity, his adventures with cannibals, his faithful man Friday. You listen quietly. It is a fine story, you suppose, but it is not your story. Your story had no cannibals, no companion. Your story was quieter, stranger, and perhaps, in its own way, much harder. It was a story not just of mastering an island, but of mastering the vast, terrifying wilderness within your own mind. You rise from the bench as the sun begins to set, pulling your coat tighter against the North Sea wind. The boy who ran away to sea all those years ago, the quarrelsome, ambitious young sailor who defied his captain, is a distant memory. The man who stands here now is someone else entirely, forged in the crucible of absolute solitude. You have returned to the world of men, but the island remains within you, an invisible landscape of silence, resilience, and a profound, unshakable self-reliance. You know you will likely go back to sea. It is the only life you truly understand. But you will go back changed. You have looked into the heart of solitude, and you have survived. You carry the island with you always. It is your burden, your strength, and your quiet, secret kingdom. And so, Alexander Selkirk's incredible journey, from marooned sailor to solitary master of his island, comes to its quiet conclusion, forever echoed in the pages of fiction. Your own long day, with its own challenges and discoveries, is also ending. Let the memory of the lonely island, the vast ocean, and the years of solitude fade away. Leave the wildness behind, and find peace in the quiet comfort of your own familiar space. If this story of survival helped you unwind tonight, a quiet like is always deeply appreciated. And if you wish to join us for more journeys into the past, please consider subscribing. Thank you for spending your quiet hours with me. May your rest be deep and untroubled by any lonely shores. Until our next story, sleep well.